Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of Allah, the most merciful, the most compassionate, welcome to this program. Welcome to our schools. Are they improving? In the previous episodes, we covered many things and we ended up talking about what are the qualities of a good or excellent class. And we mentioned some features, and today we are going to get a new one. But before I talk about this new one, last time one of you talked about something, the objectives. And one of the good experiences that I've seen in my life, that I've seen that a teacher wrote on the board the list of objectives that he wanted to achieve and explain them to the students. What was more amazing is that he asked students in general, yes, say that whenever you feel that we covered one of these objectives, come to the board and check it. Look at that. This is something really good. The students were, all of them are waiting to see any point that's covered, right? And they would come to the board and they would check that this was covered. And this is really something that tells us the students' hearts, their brains and hearts were focusing on the objectives of the lessons. Try to imagine if this happens and at the end of the lesson, the teacher would go to the students and ask them, okay, who can tell me what we have learned today? Okay, definitely what we have learned today falls under these objectives. So the students would say this and this and this. The students, again, not the teacher, should do that. So here is a link between the objectives and the students are checking out. And you would find some student coming from here, another student coming from here, and they raise to say yes. And the teacher, if he's in doubt, okay, he would say that, how did we cover this point or this objective? And the students would defend that, their viewpoint, and say that when you mention this and this and this and this, this has been achieved. This is something amazing. This is something amazing. Hopefully, inshallah, we will see this happening in your schools. Consistently, not just one day, consistently. You train your children to do this. And this was, I think, was a third grade class. Just young students, but still they can do that. If they understand the objectives, so they understand whether the teacher has covered these objectives or not. Something very important. We didn't see this in the past. This was not there in the past. Okay, this is something related to the quality of learning. And I will talk about this. Here, the quality of learning. The students are responsible for their own learning. Yes, we learned this, they have a say. And we did not learn this. Sir or Miss, we didn't cover this point number 5. You forgot to cover it. And the teacher has to tell them, either to remind them that he has covered it when he mentioned such and such, or he didn't, and he's going to make up for this. You see what I'm saying now? This is when you enter a class and you see this, you feel very pleased. Yeah, this is an outstanding class, yes, with all these features. Now we are going to talk about something very important. Individual differences. Most of the teachers, if not 99.9% of them, do not pay attention to this. And if you want to see the Islamic schools improving, you have to involve this. Most of us as teachers, when we deal with class, we deal with it as if it is one level. So the focus is the same thing to all the students. Okay, what is the problem of this? I'll give you a simple example. In the USA, they found that the Afro-Americans, because plenty of them are in prisons, regardless of the reasons. We're not going to talk about the political reasons. Everybody knows how they went there and how drugs and opiums and all types of social diseases spread among them. Anyway, it ended up that a very high percentage of them, they are in prison. And every time the USA wanted to go to a higher level, found that they cannot, because this huge number is pulling down the society. Every time, you know that last year, the country that achieved the highest level in education is, if you are aware of this, is Finland. It's not Japan, it's not USA, it's not Germany, it's Finland. The best type of education, yes, was according to the analysis was Finland. Yes, we will have, inshallah, one period talking about this. But they found what is happening is that those people need to be given extra education in order to raise their level, so they would move from where they were to a higher level. And therefore you find lots of opportunities were given to them to get scholarships, free scholarships, to get easy jobs, they wanted to upgrade them to raise them to this level, to raise the whole level. And this is one thing. The other thing is, so we have to pay attention to the students who are weaker than others. We need to do them something that's different than what we offer to the whole students. So when we enter a class, we should have 3 levels in our brains, if not in our arms. We should know that there are some students who are weak, the majority are average, and few are on the top. Those few on the top, if we don't give them something extra than others, we will have a society that all of them are on the same level. There would be no leaders on the top, because these few students in every class, 1 or 2 or 3 or 4, they are the ones who are potential to be leaders, to lead. So they should be given something extra than the others. Is this clear? So every time, as we said, that we need to program or to reprogram the brains of the teachers, yes, from knowledge to knowledge, concepts, and skills. Again, we need to do this with the way how they look at students. They should look at them at 3 levels. 1 on the top, the high achievers, and the average students, which is the majority, and the low achievers. Any school should pay attention to this phenomenon. Whether we give extra lessons to those and those on the top and the bottom, separate extra lessons. The school, this is one of the challenges to school, and every school can address it in a different way, or every teacher. There would be, for example, 1 hour in the whole week that can be assigned for this. Some schools would say that I will have half an hour extra every day for those weak students. Definitely, I would not label them as weak students. I would never. I would say that students who need support, right? Okay. Now in the classroom, what should a teacher do to do this? It's a very challenging situation to have a classroom and to have these levels. And every classroom has these levels. You will never find a classroom, all of them is 100% on the same level. Impossible, right? It's impossible.
They are slow learner.
Huh?
Slow learner.
Slow learners. We can say group number, I'll tell you, group number B, or group number Z, or group number A. But you understand what is A and what is B and what's C, okay? Okay. Now in the class, we do this when we give them tasks. As a teacher, I would say, okay, now nobody knows this issue of closed questions and open questions. So I would address the closed questions to the weak students. I know the student. Hey, Ahmed, you answer this question. So I would give him this question. It's an easy question. He doesn't know what's an easy, what's not. So I address specific questions to specific students depending on their own ability, okay? So I know that. And when I come to a challenging question, I say, hey, Fatima, this is your turn. Tell us about this. Go ahead and answer question number 9. If you don't know, okay, let Aisha help you. Okay, you see what I'm saying? Okay, and you give the challenging question to this student who is, you know that she is above other students. And I told you this is one of the ways we do with the naughty students who cause some problems, right? And who always try to show off in front of others, right? We all the time give them the tough questions so they would cool down. They don't know how to answer them, so they feel a little bit, yes, unhappy. So they cannot continue showing off and they cannot answer the questions. This is a smart way of handling the bad students in the class. Now, so you do this, and in this way, you give those students an opportunity to exercise their intelligence and their smartness because they are smarter than others. And at the same time, you give the other students opportunity to listen to those students so they would learn from them. Do you see what I'm saying? So next time they become very jealous and, okay, I will do that, okay. Okay, so when you talk to Fatima, Ahmed will say, no, I want to answer this question, I want to answer. Okay, go ahead and try, okay. You encourage them. This is one way of doing it. The other way of doing it, when you give some tasks to the students, you have 3 papers, right? And Form A, Form B, Form C. And you know what Form C is, right? Form B may be for the best students. Form C may be for the weak students. Form A may be for the average students. You can change it. So nobody would know exactly what you mean by Form A, Form B, Form C. Right? Because every time you don't give Form A to the high achievers. No. Sometimes you give them C, sometimes, depending on how you design the paper. Right? And in fact, Form A, Form B, Form C, it has the same questions. But Form A, students would answer question number 7 and number 3. And by this, we'll take a break and we'll come back after the break. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Hush, little baby, breathing so calm.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. We'll continue this episode. We were talking about individual differences, or what is known nowadays differentiation. That means the teacher in the classroom makes differentiation between students. He differentiates between them. He addresses them according to their own needs. They are in the same class, but some of them are high achievers and some of them are low achievers and some of them are in the average. So he addresses these 3 levels. So we talked about this example. So Form A would answer question number 7 and question number 3. I take them for them. This is all what group. So if you get this paper, right? So you have to answer question number 3 and number 7 only, because I know your levels, right? So that's why I gave you Form A and not Form C. And that's why I gave you Form B and not Form A. Do you see what I'm saying? So students would not notice this. You are the only smart guy in the classroom. So you're doing this and students are answering. So everybody knows that he is doing something at his own level. By doing this, you are addressing the needs of all the students. So the high achievers have difficult tasks and problems and questions to answer. And the low achievers are doing something that is within their capacity. Of course, one of the questions would be a little bit higher than the level. And this requires from the teachers is that knowing your students as well as you know your children. When I ask you, about your students, tell me exactly, I can describe them. They are good in this, not good in this, excellent here, outstanding here, poor here. You can describe your student. One very important thing for the teacher is to know his or her students. And that's why I said that it's better for any one of us to stay in his school if the principals pay well, right? Without moving from one school to another. Because you already know the students. So you can deal with them. As the doctor, your doctor, if you deal with the doctor for 10 years, he exactly knows your history. So when he gives you or she gives you a medicine, right? She gives you a medicine that suits your situation, that's different from this situation. That's what the scholars of Islam do. They give you a fatwa different from the fatwa they give to him. They give you a fatwa different from the fatwa. That's why it's very dangerous to take a fatwa that's given to this sister and to take it and apply it to the other sister. Very dangerous. It's the same medicine. Same thing about medicine, okay? Yeah, so you take the same medicine and you apply it to another person, it doesn't give you the same result because we are different. So it's very important for a teacher, requirement for teachers to know their students well. And the thing that will help you know your students well, remember when I connected this with what? What is the thing that would help you know your students well? Diagnostic tests. Don't be unhappy. Women are always better in education than men. This is the reality in schools, right? Can you say this in schools? Yes. all over the world, by the way. So I was saying that the thing that would help you know your students well is the diagnostic test that you do in the beginning. And that's why most of the efforts of the school and the teachers should go to this diagnostic test. If you do it well, it helps you really to know all the things that the students have, the goods and the bads. It needs a lot of effort, and that's why you can change it from year to year, depending on how much you have progressed yourself. Yes, please.
You were mentioning about this diagnostic test and differential learning.
I mentioned?
About differential learning?
Yeah.
Okay.
Differentiation, yeah.
Now, how do we achieve that the slow learners to improve?
I said,
we say that we are giving them easy questions and
in the classroom.
In the classroom.
Outside the classroom, you have to have extra work for them. You have to sit with them, right? To give them extra something to raise their level. Okay? So this is, again, I said that this is a challenge.
So parallelly, that is also supposed to be happening.
Absolutely. We're talking about this. That's why you should have good relationship with the family. So I said that you need to exercise, you need to do something to your children. We cannot do it in the class. So you give them something that they can work with their children at home. So this is another way. So working with the parent, one level, giving extra lessons, another level, right? Giving those students, you can gather them in periods and you have a specialized teacher in this area who can address them, right? So you have to understand these things. All these things help, right? So now we are talking about differentiation and the link between differentiation and the diagnostic test. Knowing your students well. This is very easy to be said, but it's difficult to be done. Easier said than done. To know all those students, but staying with them long times and having good diagnostic tests will help you to do this. Now, of course, differentiation takes different things. When you go to the library with your students, you know the stories that they are reading. So you recommend the students, low achievers, to select from these 50 books, 50 stories to read. Select from them. You select. You go to high achievers and ask them to select from the other 30 students because you know the level of the books in your library. So, and you go to the average students and you can ask them to select from these 100 stories. Do you see what's happening? So now you are addressing these high achievers. They are reading stories of 200 pages, while slow achievers, for example, slow learners, are reading something of 70 or 80 pages and simple style. So this is another way of doing it. There are different ways of dealing with differentiation, dealing with individual differences in students. The homework that you give them should be different. It's from the book, but you ask a group of students to answer question number 3 and question number 9, and you ask the rest of the students to answer this and this and this. Okay? Or you can give them the same questions, answer if the questions are put in order of difficulty, right? Hierarchy of difficulty. You say that, okay, you can answer as many questions as you can. As many questions as you can. And you would see from these types of questions that some students are answering from 1 to 5, some students are answering from 1 to 7, some students are answering from 1 to 10. Do you see that? Because usually most of the tasks put in order, the most difficult comes at the end.
Like the problems what we have for slow learners, we also came across certain students who are high achievers, who become restless if they are not given that such subject. You know, as you said about the more questions than what the normal students can. So this is also one more problem, I think, which we should be
You are killing them. You are killing them because you are not addressing their needs. They answer the questions in 5 minutes and they do nothing. The waste of time for them. And that's why you need to keep challenging them. You have some questions with you all the time ready. When they finish the task, give them another one. When they finish it, give them another one. Give them and so on and so forth. Of course, this requires a lot of work from the teachers.
We have in our schools one more system which we follow, which can be of help to others, is that we have 2 teachers per classroom. So the main teacher follows the majority of the students, And the specialized students have been taken care by the other teachers.
Wonderful. If you can do that, that's why there is no wonder in kindergarten classes in some countries, you would find 3 teachers in the class. If you have the money, do it. Because in other words, as if they are 3 different classes. So this is how you deal with them. So if you can find one teacher who can deal with all these different classes at the same time, this should be an amazing and outstanding teacher, right? Okay, another thing, of course, as you do extra work for the slow learners, you do also extra work for the high achievers. There are some classes for them, extra classes for them, right? So you have to do that because those students are running at a speed that's totally different with the other students.
High achievers are more difficult to handle than the slow learner.
Sometimes it is, yes. Sometimes definitely it is. But don't expect that they will be at a certain time. You can push them a little. And after some time, 1 or 2 years, you will find some of them are moving from this level to that level. Some of them. But this is life. We are different. But we are trying to give every student his own rights. That's what the Prophet ﷺ said. أَعْطِ كُلَّ ذِي حَقٍّ حَقًّهُ. We look at it, differentiation from the Islamic perspective. This is not something that we learned from others. This one deserves to take this, so he takes this. Islam doesn't mean that equality when you are the president or a ruler of a country, right? You give the same amount of money to each one. No. No, this one has 2 children and this one has 7 children, right? So he should take more. More here does not mean that something extra, no. Because this is his situation. This is exactly what happens in classes. When we deal with the average, we should deal with them differently than when we deal the others. That's why we need to give them something extra and different from those ones. The same thing applies to the slow learners. Is this concept clear? And I leave it to your imagination and creativity to think of different ways of doing this. But if you enter a class and you don't find this, right? What do you expect? You expect there is not a good class. This is not an outstanding class. Now we agree? So do you think that if I visit you in your classes, where do you fall? In the outstanding or in the other one? Outstanding. The outstanding, inshallah. So if I visited you last week, what is the situation? Okay, I need to take this seriously. If you want to improve your school, these are the factors that would help you improve your school. Again, they are easier said than done. You enjoy that because you're listening. But when you act, you will find that it requires a lot of work and effort from you. But this is where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala rewards you, inshallah. Jazakumullahu khairan. I hope this concept of individual differences and differentiation would be very clear, and we need to see it working consistently in our classrooms. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.